Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Real Podcasters with myself, Regan, and I'm joined virtually, as ever, by my good friend Dan. Hi, Dan.
Good evening.
Now, granted, I know we've already been talking outside of this for the past 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm contractually obligated to ask you how your week's been between episodes.
I mean, considering the last Graveyard Chit Chat episode, I said that I was going to try and watch more things. I have watched some more things, you'll be pleased to know.
Oh, well, that's alright then.
Some of them good, some of them not terrible, but not great either. More on that on Thursday. I've also been playing through a bit Alien Isolation, about an hour's worth before I just, no. Not yet. Not
yet.
Quite ready for this yet. Yeah.
I'm not emotionally prepared to do this.
Yeah, just progress. You know what it is? Like, I think I'm actually going to set the record in terms of my own, personal gameplay by this is the longest playthrough ever because it's just taking me a millennia to get through this damn game.
Yeah, we'll just ignore the fact that I've completed that bloody thing 5 or 6 times now. I'm not flexing because, honestly, it was horrifying. It was just so annoying.
It's a horrifying game.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. And today I've just been playing through Telltale's The Walking Dead because I really like it, so...
You're like one of 7 people that do, I assume. But yeah, so this has been a bit of a hectic week, to say the least. For you guys listening at home or wherever you listen to us, there has been a bit of a break in between episodes. Not really. We did actually record last week for our M. Night Shyamalan episode, but I was so tired and lost that's still on my computer. I haven't uploaded or anything. I'll see what I do with that. It's just I'm just annoyed once again with Dan because he just sounds so much more natural without a script, whereas I just sound like myself really, as opposed to this, which is slightly easier. Sorry, Dan. Sorry to throw you under the metaphorical bus again.
Under the bus with a plot twist.
Yeah. Now, before we delve into today's topic, I do want to say this. If you do enjoy this sort of thing, please leave a like and all that, and subscribe if you want. It's 100% free, or at least to my knowledge it is.
It is, yes.
It is, yes. And we post a new episode every week where we talk about all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. I've now moved that tagline just a little bit further down the script. Clearly I'm moving. As ever, I would like a little bit more traction on the podcast, get some new listeners, all that good stuff. And of course, we've got our social media in the description. We've both got Letterboxd accounts. I'm currently going through all my logged entries for 2023 and trying to catch up on a load of reviews. Dan has an account for our sister podcast, as he's mentioned, Graveyard Chit Chat. Obviously, give that one a listen to if you like horror movies. I'm now plugging your podcast now. I'm just feeling just a little bit nicer.
It's about time.
I know. I'm sorry, Dan. And we've also got an Instagram where you'll find most of our updates. I've also gotten rid of the Twitter link in the description because Twitter is about as dead as Michael Myers is at the end of Halloween Ends, which is ironic because that was the last episode that we actually referenced on Twitter for that.
So Twitter's scrunched up in a trash compactor?
As it should be, especially right now. I am in the process of trying to craft a page for over on that Mastodon Twitter beta version. It's just trying to find an actual sort of like server on there specifically for podcasts. Otherwise, I'm just going to be on the general one, and who knows. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out on that if you're interested. That's the shameless plugs out of the way. Let's discuss the first in a long-running series, much like with Doctor Who last year. We're going to be discussing Halo. Now, I did talk about the TV series last year when we were talking about the best and worst.
Yes, on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I'm not going to plug that. It's fine. Both the episode that we did and the actual series. But no, we're going to talk about the actual video game series. I'm going to kick things off with Halo Combat Evolved from 2001. 22 years old.
It's mad that, it is truthfully mad. I mean, this came out when, I was a wee Ben, to say the least.
I will have been 3 or 4, I think.
Something like that. Around that age, really young.
And obviously, I wasn't playing it. I didn't have even, an original recipe Xbox. I always had to well, I do now, but it doesn't get used. I always played like the original Xbox over at my nan's. I think she had one of the Crash Bandicoot games on there, and we would just religiously play that. Never, as I say, it wasn't until like an actual 360. But I'm curious, Dan, with your history on this game, when did you first play it, and what's your history with it?
With Combat Evolved specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, much like yourself, I don't really remember playing it on the original console. I had original consoles. I had two, in fact. One was downstairs and one was upstairs because my older brother had one.
Mm.
We had a version where it was like a limited edition console where it was like basically all transparent, so you could see like all the stuff inside the console.
Like one of those things, yeah.
Yeah, and the controls were like that as well. I had that one for the time being, and then we swapped. Don't know why, but we did. But he had Halo, I believe, on his console, and he played that quite often with his friends. And I didn't play it until they did a release of it. Well, I think like a remastered release of it on the 360 when it came out. It was like Halo Anniversary, it was called. It wasn't just called Halo, it was Halo Anniversary.
Yeah.
And that's when I first got introduced to it. And, you could do the switching between, like, the old-gen graphics and, like, the remastered graphics. So I did, like, a bit of both just to see, like, how far this game had come. And me and my younger sister, because we're fans of Halo, we used to play it quite a lot, and we played this quite religiously. In fact, I mean, we used to just grief each other, in fairness. Like, we just bully each other with sticky grenades and stuff, but, we had a great time with it.
Would.
Not sort of my favourite Halo game. Well, I mean, sure, it's fun to play, but there are some missions in that game that can just drive the insanest man over the edge.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that, for sure, because we've definitely got a few things to say on that one.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I'm pretty much in the same bank as you.
It's the same Warthog as you, since how we're doing a Halo thing now. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, you should. According to the script, it's my turn to talk. I'm going to keep on referencing the fact there's a script in this one, which means nothing to the audience. They're just like, what the hell is he on about? Like, the one time I didn't. So I hadn't played any of this game until Combat Evolved Anniversary came out in 2011, so I played it just after. It's actually funny enough, that was 343 Industries' first Halo release, after they acquired the rights to Halo. So technically their first actual game was Halo 4.
Yeah.
But the first release they did was
Combat
porting
Evolved.
over Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. So I ended up borrowing this off my friend Jordan because he owned it, I didn't. And yeah, I played it quite a bit, but I never actually owned the game myself until the Master Chief Collection came out, and I then got another Xbox as well, because I went through a couple of years of not bothering with having an Xbox anymore. I just went through a random phase, really. And now, of course, you've got it on the Master Chief Collection now, based on the original port. There are little bits there that's quite interesting to talk about. In terms of the origins of this game, though, so beyond the likes of like GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64, there hadn't been like a full-fledged PC-style first-person shooter for consoles. It was pretty much deemed impossible. Hence why still a lot of games echoed a lot of GoldenEye. So even like, did you ever play Time Splitters?
No.
So that one very much copied the same kind of gameplay controls as GoldenEye, as opposed to Halo, despite the fact that Time Splitters came out after Halo. But then Bungie came along and made history with Halo Combat Evolved in 2001. That just completely rewrote the rulebook of what a first-person shooter can be. And if I'm honest, I'd argue it was like quite a few decades ahead of its time, frankly.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, when it came out, like, it was just ahead of the game in terms of first-person shooters. It was one of a kind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that definitely surprised Microsoft as well. I mean, you had rave reviews, really impressive sales. They had a winner, and it was clear that Halo wasn't just going to be like a one-off. It was absolutely going to become a franchise. So I could do like a brief like synopsis for this, but I think anyone who knows Halo knows what
most
this
people
is.
know it. I mean, even people who don't play it, they know enough about it, but
Yeah, so I mean, so we're set in the 26th century, I believe it is. Yeah, 26th century, and you're playing as a super soldier known as the Master Chief, a member of the UNSC, who are battling this religious race of aliens known as the Covenant. They end up crashing on this mysterious ring world known as Halo, and a bunch of things happen, and there's a bunch of things to shoot at.
A bunch of things happen. There's a bunch of things to shoot at. There's a bunch of explosions.
But most importantly, there are corridors. There's a lot of corridors.
So many corridors.
Clearly, whoever designed the Halo rings were a big fan of classic era Doctor Who, and even bits of modern Doctor Who as well, where it's just nothing but corridors.
So many corridors.
And you
It's
thought,
ridiculous.
and you thought I wasn't going to get a Doctor Who reference in about Halo. You know full well I will find a way.
It's clearly where, the modern day Doctor Who got its influence from. Combat Evolved's corridors.
Yes, of course. Time travel evolved. So yeah, if we're going to talk about Halo, let's talk about the man who is on the front cover, just shooting at things really, really angrily, or he might be smiling. We don't know. We can't see his face. We never do. And that is, of course, the Master Chief. Now, unlike with future installments that do this better, Master Chief in Combat Evolved, if I'm going to dip into negatives just immediately, he's not a character in this. Like, he really isn't. He's just an entity for the player to inhabit.
He's just the avatar you play as, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a silent badass with a really cool set of armor, but honestly, not much more. I don't know how you feel.
Hot take, I don't like the armor in Combat Evolved. I hate the helmet design.
I
hate it.
I don't know if it's my least favorite. It probably is, to be honest. But then I'm like really biased towards one of the ones that people hate even more, which we'll get to in a few months.
Yeah. No, I've never been a fan of like the helmet and stuff like that. I mean, like, it's just an avatar you play as. There's no character to it, which, I suppose you can say for a couple of the other Halo games as well, but then he starts to become a bit more of a character. Halo 4 specifically, because he actually is a character in that. He's not just a walking shell.
Well, exactly, yeah. At least future games actually put in the hard work to actually make this character an actual person. The
only characteristics you get out of the Master Chief in this one is the death grunts that...
Yeah, there's a lot of those. And, if we're going to go with the groaning sounds, of course, you've got Steve Downes voicing the character, and still is, over 20 years later, and he's just, he's able to bring, like, about as much personality to the Chief as you can when the script is just, like, just stand there and look badass. With, like, the odd little line.
Just stand there and just look cool.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I do like the voice, just naturally. Like, the voice just works so well. But as I say, like, this character is certainly improved upon in later installments. Even the sequel, frankly, does it a bit better.
Oh, for sure.
In terms of, like, the other notable character that Combat Evolved brings in is Cortana, voiced by Jen Taylor.
Yes.
So she's the AI that accompanies Master Chief on his journey across the Halo ring, and unlike the Chief and most other characters in this game, she has a discernible personality that makes her stand out against everyone else. She is just clearly just having fun, frankly.
Yeah.
And it's just ironic that it's the artificial being that's more human than the actual humans that we see.
It's funny the fact that the artificial intelligence is more of a character than the main character.
I know, it's weird. But then again, when you think about it, if you, like, as you mentioned with Halo 4 before, who's the main character of Halo 4? I'd say it's Cortana, really. It's her story.
I think it starts off with, I mean, we'll definitely delve into it when we get to our Halo 4 retrospective. Mm-hmm. But it's for sure Cortana in the later game. Like, I could say, like, yeah, Master Chief is a big part of it, but, like, it's 100% Cortana. Like, it just is, considering what the story involves. So, But yeah, I mean, in this, she's pretty much just the main character. Like, Chief is just, well, I think the idea behind it, and this is just my theory on Combat Evolved, because obviously it was one of a kind first-person shooter, they just thought, well, the idea is that you are this person. You're your own voice, etc.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, to be honest, I would definitely echo that kind of sentiment, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I think Jen Taylor does a really, really good job as Cortana. As I say, something she does she does continue to do in later installments, in particular with Halo 4, and even bits of Halo Infinite in some interesting ways, which you don't even know about yet because you still haven't played Halo Infinite.
Still haven't even finished 5.
That's barely an inconvenience, to be honest. It's a pretty naff game. Spoilers for an episode.
I know, spoilers for an episode miles down the line.
I'm gonna have to replay Halo 5, aren't I? Oh god. No, thanks. I mean, in terms of other characters in this, there isn't really many of note. I think the only other two I could name off the top of my head would be like Sergeant Johnson, who, as I say, is better in other games. When here he's he's essentially
just a background character.
Yeah, I'd argue he's basically like, like the shouty Corporal Colonel guy at the beginning of Full Metal Jacket, who's just constantly shouting.
Yeah, it does remind you a bit of him.
I'm picturing Johnson as like the kind of character that would see like a flower on the Halo ring and just start screaming at us.
Which just whips a Spartan laser out.
I'm picturing that now.
That sounds bad.
That doesn't sound bad. It sounds funny. And then I guess you've also got Captain Keyes as well. But again, it's like
I wouldn't really say he's like a huge character in this. So I mean, like, in the submissions he plays an importance, but I wouldn't say he's like a massively important character. He's just sort of on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we'll definitely come back to this in a little bit. But the strength of Combat Evolved is not the characters or the story. We'll definitely get more to that. Obviously, when you land on the Halo ring, you've got 2 factions of enemies to deal with. 2, Dan. Like, that's nuts. Like, imagine that. I played it. It's pretty fun. Obviously, the first you've got is the Covenant. They are, as I say, a religious faction of aliens who worship an alien race known as the Forerunners, who are the creators of the Halo array. Halo 2 and later games obviously does a lot better when it comes to developing the Covenant. Even like the beginning of Halo 2 picks up immediately after this one and focuses exclusively on the Covenant and how they embarrass themselves with their failure. Like it wasn't that difficult. I mean, honestly, he's just one guy. The grunts could have done it.
Bloody Arbiter.
Screw the Arbiter. We'll talk about him later. Well, in a later episode. We're not talking about him in this one. Heaven forbid. So here they exist mostly as an adversary, just to blow up. Of course, you've got the grunts who don't pose much of a threat until you put them in a group or give them a bunch, or you give them a bag of grenades and be like, "Here you go, pick one," and they just go crazy on you. That's like the only point where they're even particularly like dangerous at all.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I prefer like the Covenant and later games than this. I mean, like, look, on harder difficulties, they're annoying as hell. They are so annoying. Because it's just like, oh, you've got like half a bar of health. Let me just charge up my pistol. I hate it. I hate when they do that.
Like, I really hate the plasma pistol. I really do. Then, of course, you've got the Jackals, who prefer to shoot from a distance, probably because they look hideous.
It's no wonder they're high behind that shield.
Well, yeah, just all of the time. All of the time.
What I mean, like, if you're that hideous, I think you're gonna.
Jesus. I didn't realise that this would just devolve into just, like...
roasting the creatures of the Covenant.
Roasting the Covenants.
The grunts are little ugly-ass dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
Jackals are just hideous dinosaurs hiding behind shields.
And the elites.
Mutant scorpions with weird mandible things.
Steroid-induced Jar Jar Binks, I think. Because these guys also can't talk. I'm not going to go there. I'm actually picturing that now, and I think it's better.
I think it's better.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Missile doodle, wub wub wub.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no.
Because that's what they do in that game when they just see it, they just go wub 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 wub.
Yeah. God, stupid elites. Yeah, so they're like every colour of the rainbow in this. It's brilliant, and I still don't know which like colour is like relative to which like rank they are.
There are 3 in Combat Evolved. There are the blue ones where they are basically just like the common like elite, and then you get the ones folk. The common folk. They hang with the grunts and the jackals. Making sure they're doing their jobs,
sipping tea.
well, not really, just chucking grenades and firing plasma weapons very aggressively.
It's the same thing.
Then you get the officer ones who are like in the red attire, who, again, they're a bit more of a pain in the arse to deal with because they tend to, like, once their shield goes down, they just run for their lives.
Mm.
And then you get, like, what I'd say is, it's a zealot. It's called a zealot, and they're just the biggest pains in the asses ever.
Yeah,
they're in, like, white gear, and they just run at you with an energy sword, and it's petrifying. Oh, and there's the Spec Ops ones as well, the ones who go invisible.
I hate those ones so much.
No, they're absolute bastards.
Just look forward to Halo Infinite. It gets worse.
Oh, great.
And by worse, I mean more challenging as opposed to just terrible. Depending on how you float. And then, of course, there's the hunters, who are incredibly difficult to kill until you realise you have a pistol and you just have to go behind them and shoot them in the back once.
Yeah, I never understood that logic of...
I feel like it was a mistake.
It's the sniper rifle and the Magnum.
Oh, the
Best
Magnum
two weapons
is...
were hunters. One shot to the back and they're gone. Even on legendary difficulty, one shot and they're gone.
Yeah,
it's just trying to get behind the hunter on legendary difficulty.
Pretty easy.
Again, that sounds really bad.
But yeah, you just shoot them once and then they're down. And shame that trick isn't used in later games. Annoyingly, that would have been really useful. But you haven't just got the Covenant to deal with. You've also got the Flood, which is a parasitic race that infect both the living and the dead. I do like the concept of the Flood narratively, but like gameplay wise, they are really not very fun to fight. Like
they're very tedious, especially in Combat Evolved. Like it's really tedious in Combat Evolved. I mean, they're in 2 and 3 as well, and I think in 2 and 3 they're like the best. In Combat Evolved, because at least with those two, like, it changes up the gameplay of it, so like it's not just fighting the same old thing in the same room with corridors, etc. In this, it's just corridors galore. Like, there's flood in that room, there's flood in that room, there's flood over there.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, come on, this is boring.
Yeah, for me, it's like the encounters with them just become extremely repetitive, devolving into moments where you are just begging for it to be over, not because it's scary, but just because you're bored, and you've only been fighting them for like 10 or 11 seconds, and you're like,
specifically the library, like where it's just like you go down one long room and they're all there, then you go into another long room and they're all there, and I'm just like, oh, can we just? Oh
yeah, we'll definitely talk about the library as well, which I don't always say we would, but we have to address this. If we do go back to the positives, I think the design for the Halo ring is just amazing.
Yeah, like, it's good.
It's really such cool. Well, I think that when Star Wars decides to rip it off, in that one episode of the Book of Mandalorian, as I have to affectionately call it still, or
the Book of the Mandalorian,
or the lack of Boba Fett, either or, and it is literally just the Halo ring. And I was like, I'm really annoyed because there is the Halo series, but you don't actually rock up to the Halo ring until like the very, very end. I think. I've actually forgotten, to be honest.
To be honest, I can't really remember.
No. It's like the moment when you crash on the ring and you look at your surroundings, it still gives me goosebumps, even in 2023. That's how good of a reveal it is. And there's also like a really great diverse array of hubs to explore across the story. It's not just like forests and stuff. Looking at you here.
No, there is stuff to like explore. It's not just like the same generic background used in all of them. Like it is quite good with that, I'd say, for like a game from 2000.
Yeah, unlike Halo Infinite, which is also set on a Halo ring, and it's just forests and some
forest
and some broky metal bits. At least this one has snow and oceans. That one doesn't. Yeah. It just has a floor that's never ending. We'll get to that. And you've also got the Forerunner architecture that changes depending on which version you play. So like the original is decidedly more dark and mysterious, whereas the remastered one it stays closer to the likes of Reach and even like bits of Halo 4.
Yeah, definitely.
It's brighter and cleaner. whether or not people prefer that, that's entirely up to them.
I often
really.
switch between the two when I've played it, like just to like when I go exploring, I sort of like switch on the graphics on and off just to see what it looked like, and then go back to it. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I actually prefer this to the remastered version, or if I like this design compared to the older version.
I mean, it's weird because I know there was a lot of criticisms. If we do talk a little bit about like the graphics and stuff,
Yeah.
I know people had a bit of a hissy fit over the fact that the character models, specifically for the Covenant, they basically just reused the ones from Reach, and people were like, "Well, no, they wouldn't do that." But in reality, it basically makes sense because similar to even similar to, weirdly enough, like Star Wars Rogue One, both these things are set like pretty much immediately against one another, so it's not like they're gonna randomly evolve in 17 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
As funny as that would be, it's like, oh no, it's time to evolve. It's almost like we're shifting games. So I don't mind. Though I think if we do go back to the Forerunner architecture thing, I think I would have preferred it to just still be quite dark and just a bit more moody. I think it fits the tone of the game.
Yeah, I
than
think the whole
glossy
like
sheen.
mysteriousness and stuff like that, it just works a bit better than all this like polished stuff. But you know, we all have our opinions on that. I personally prefer like the darker, mysterious-y, moody stuff.
Yeah, and something that does complement the dark and the moody. We're not actually talking about Dan's preference in music, though we are talking about music. That was just really harsh on my points. I do apologise, Dan. I'm aware that you like punk music.
Sticks and stones,
Will break your bones.
or in this case, plasma grenades and magnums.
As in like the ice cream or the pistol?
No, I mean the pistol.
Oh, okay, that's a pity.
Okay, well, plasma grenades and needlers will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. That's better. But yes,
Halo puns.
Yes, there's so few. I mean many. No, not few. But yeah, one constant across every critique or review of this game, it's always the same, and that is the score is just the best thing about the game, I'd say. Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore are able to craft such an amazing tone, and I feel that just perfectly complements the story as it plays out. You know, it's atmospheric, it's mysterious, it's wondrous, it's action-packed. Realistically, it's everything you'd want from a score for Halo.
Yeah. At no point while playing this game do I ever feel that the score becomes repetitive, because it doesn't. It just feels so different every mission you do. It just feels like that is the perfect score for that perfect setting. Like Two Betrayals one in the snow, the score for that's great.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the tracks I can't fully remember the name of, but I do like to listen to the scores like very much isolated from the game, because they just have that effect. Like that's definitely something that was ahead of its time as well, because you even have like even modern day video game scores, most of them just kind of just blend into the background, or
Oh yeah,
they don't really put much effort into it.
no, it's just
Whereas,
sort of there. Whereas this actually like puts in 100% the effort to make you like feel in the moment.
Yeah, so it is able to stand tall on its own, even compared to entries in this entire series.
Yeah.
Like some of them are better than others, to say the least.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the main theme is probably still my favourite bit of the score. But also like the final tracks playing out as you escape in the warthog at the end. That one's really fun.
The Maw, I think that mission's called. Yeah, that score is just terrific. It's much like the one with Halo 3 as well, very similar in respects, and the same kind of mood going for it. It's great. But yeah, I mean, the theme is just like a pure nostalgia trip.
Oh, definitely. If we are going to talk about the structure of the game, so we will end up discussing that thing. So naturally, we are dipping back into the negatives on this one, but structurally, I don't think the game really holds up. Like, as you said, that especially with the library, there is so much time going through copy-paste rooms that border on insanity. As I said, the library is absolutely the worst offender, with you traversing identical rooms for what feels like as Rose Dawson
purgatory.
It's
absolute purgatory.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're kind of traveling through it. To quote Rose Dawson from Titanic, for something like 84 years.
It's been 84 years.
And I'm finally out. Excellent, you're going to have to go backwards again. I'm like, I've wasted my life.
I'm definitely in agreement there. Like, I mean, the library is 100% the worst offender for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also say the first mission where you're introduced to the Flood is probably another one. Because let's face it, there are just a lot of rooms. It's not necessarily corridors on this one, it's just rooms.
Well, even when you
Lots of
think about
rooms.
it, the way the missions and the entire game is designed, you end up getting to a point with all the missions. And then you just end up going backwards on yourself. So you're just playing the exact same missions again, just in reverse.
Yeah.
And I'm just sat there thinking, that is just, like, it's just lazy. Like, really lazy. And
it really is quite sadly lazy.
Mm-hmm. I think, and I know Bungie, even themselves, have admitted that it wasn't a good idea. That doesn't make it better. It's still terrible.
No, it's... What is done is done.
Mm-hmm. Literally. There is still some strong missions, specifically the first two. I do like the opening stuff on the ship when you're having like your little
Pillar of Autumn.
Yeah. I nearly said Forward onto Dawn, but then I'm mixing it up with Halo 3 and 4 again.
I will say that the opening stuff is pretty good, but it just becomes so repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just walking through like the little, like, I want to say like the venti things to like navigate around the ship and get to keys. I'm just like, this is just, it didn't really start off repetitive, but when you've played the game quite religiously, you notice that a lot of the missions are the same.
Yeah, and especially looking at how like the mission structure has evolved, especially in Halo, because realistically, it actually wasn't until Halo Infinite that like the way the missions are structured actually evolved. Which is ironic considering that a third of this title is the word evolved.
Yeah.
Though, granted, that's for combat, not missions evolved.
Missions evolved.
But yeah, it wasn't until Halo Infinite when I thought, let's overhaul how missions actually work in this franchise, because it is just exactly the same.
Yes.
Just a lot of repetitive rooms and encounters. So yeah, I will repeat myself on this one. The strengths of Halo lie in its world design and audio, but not the script and the story by any means. And if you are going to start to compare the game to 2001 to now, in terms of, does it still hold up? I'd say in some areas, yes.
Relatively.
Yeah. Relatively is a good way to look at it, because I think, as I said, the gameplay was decades ahead of its time.
Yes.
It forced the competition. Most of them, unlike the ones who did time splitters, they're like, no, that won't catch on. Although, funnily enough, actually, I joke about that. That was like a serious criticism towards this game when it was first released, and people hated the controls and believed it was going to be a one-time thing and no one would ever try and copy it.
Yeah.
And there's just Bungie over there, as if they're like the Shrek meme with sort of like the really weird face, or like the...
Yeah.
Like, is that so? Are you really going to do that? Yes, they are.
Well, it's like like, bro, can I copy your work? Yeah, but sure, just make sure it's not the same.
Yeah, it is literally like there's so many gameplay elements, like even like the regenerating health thing. That was basically stolen and used in other games and not used nearly as effectively. And of course, you've got like the varying levels of difficulty, including the legendary.
Legendary.
Yeah, that difficulty gets, well, more difficult in future installments, especially with Halo 2. That one is
sanity
the worst
breaking.
offender. Although, because funny enough, because I think with Regan and Dan, it wasn't actually not too long into the pandemic. Actually, we started going through the games on Legendary.
God.
I think I'd done it years ago, but I thought I haven't done it on this version yet, so that gives me an excuse to do it.
I've done it on every single Master Chief version so far.
Yeah, once we got a Halo 3 ODST, that was... We didn't finish that, did we? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did, no.
We had to call in reinforcements for that one.
No. Because, do you know what it is? Like, the game is generally really easy after certain missions, but some of those missions are just like Halo 2 style BS.
Yeah, and I think even Combat Evolved is super difficult in places on Legendary.
The library.
Stop with the library. I mean, yes, obviously with the library, it's a complete and utter farce.
Keys. Not even, just don't even get started with keys.
I'd rather the only key I want is the key that lets me stop playing this game.
I know, I was wishing I had that blooming key.
Yeah.
I was just sat to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing to myself? It's just a horrible, horrible idea.
Yeah, it's just.
But I did it anyway.
I mean, I appreciate the challenge when it's just challenging. This is just suicide,
when it's
frankly. Every single time
it's much like with Halo 2, and I mean, we'll 100% be mentioning that with our Halo 2 one, but like, Halo 2 just feels super unfun in terms of being challenging. It doesn't feel challenging, it just feels like, here's a new look on Halo, have fun, you're gonna die.
Well, that's it really, because that's actually a really good way to look at it, because especially with more challenging like difficulties in games, you don't want to reduce like the entertainment value. And I think with Halo,
it's like I'm pretty sure it's for every Halo game on the Master Chief Collection, but obviously you have difficulties, as we know. You've got normal, heroic, legendary, and then there's like legendary plus, which is the lasso challenges, which is basically every single skull multiplier is turned on just to make your game that little bit infuriatingly difficult. Like there are skulls, like if you die, you start the whole mission again on legendary.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm surprised they didn't just take the mick even further and just implement one secret one that's basically like a spin-off of that skull. Whereas the case of once you die, you don't just start the mission again, you start the entire game again. I feel like that'd be a thing.
Nah.
If it's like, not already.
Because I know the skulls have different, like, they're all the same across the games, but they have different effect in some of the games. Like, with the Iron Skull, which is the one I was referring to, like, if you're with co-op partner, it just takes you back a checkpoint. Whereas if you're by yourself, you start the entire mission all over again. So you could be like, I don't know, at the end of 2 Betrayals, you get shot by some plasma pistol wielding grunt. You start the whole thing again.
Obviously, you're then wondering, have we done these ones yet? No. Obviously not.
I would never, ever touch them, because to me, as you mentioned, that isn't a fun challenge. That's just, like, who has the time to sit and do the lasso challenge? Who has the time?
Yeah, and I think especially, like, going back to the whole thing of, like, does it lose its entertainment value? I'd argue
for sure.
Yes, actually, because it's less of a, yes, we finally did it. It's more like, yes, we finally did it. Can we move on?
Yeah, that was pretty much me with Legendary. I was like, I should probably feel more proud of myself, but I don't, because I could have just been doing something a bit more constructive with my life.
Yeah, literally.
Like, I could have been onto a different Halo game, but no, I've just like sweated Combat Evolved for 6 hours straight.
No, I know. I mean, like, I know it does sound like we are ragging on this game. I should stress there is things that we like in it, but it's the first game in the series. There are going to be teething issues that the world will fix, because otherwise, then what the hell was the point? Like, what the hell could you actually innovate on? And some of the games didn't even look those things that they could have innovated on. They just sort of kept it.
Yeah, kept it quite the same.
Even like into more recent installments and a different head actually covering the games. But, as I say, there are things that I do like, and as I say, it was ahead of its time. The score, as well as a masterful creation that still outdoes so many other game scores we get a day, except for Assassin's Creed. To be honest, they really, really work. Graphically, it's, of course, changed. I mean, 2001 graphics look very much 2001, if I'm honest. Not 2001 A Space Odyssey. This is 2001 A Halo Odyssey. It's very, very different.
Halo Odyssey.
Just sort of like a revolving Halo where just constantly is lost.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. There are some teething issues with it, but it's the first game of this franchise, or what would soon become a franchise. So, I mean, as they say, like, we're not ragging on this game.
No, definitely
there are
not.
parts we do like, score being one of them. It's the same with every Halo game. I like every single Halo score.
Yeah.
but my god, does it just get repetitive.
One bit that we could talk about if we had, I mean, if we really wanted to, but I don't feel like we can much, is the multiplayer side of things, because that is available in the Master Chief Collection if you're lucky to even get into a game in that particular one. And if I'm honest, I have a little bit, and I'm not a fan.
I've got quite a bit of experience with that, so I can definitely talk about that.
Excellent, please, by all means.
Right. So as we know, the Halo multiplayer across, like, the Master Chief Collection varies, and with Combat Evolved and 2, it's kept very simplistic.
Yeah.
2 has slightly more game modes, but with, like, the first one, it's pretty much just like Slayer and
Pretty
like
bare bones.
Yeah, like really bare bones multiplayer. It's not fun in any way, shape, or form. It's just like it's much like the campaign at times. It's just awfully repetitive. Like the maps and stuff like that, they're just really generic. Like some of the maps are literally just like random like towers and stuff like that. I'm like, well, yeah, at the time this was probably like really cool, but like you look on newer games and the maps are so much more like they've got a lot more exploration to them, like Big Team Battle and stuff like that on Reach as being an example. You can just go and explore the map. Well, these ones you're so confined to like this like grid map. It's ridiculous, and it's just like, well, I could just be doing like something else. Yeah, it's alright, but I suppose we can also mention the anniversary multiplayer that was available on Reach.
Yeah, so 343 decided to, instead of porting over like the multiplayer from the original game, they'll just put in a couple of stuff from Reach, which I think was actually some remastered maps, or at least maps based on ones from Combat Evolved that they're putting here with Reach. So it's really disconcerting, to be honest. It's such a weird shift, because naturally you go from one gameplay style to the other, and Reach already changed quite a bit compared to the original. I only played it I only played it about as long as I borrowed the game, to be honest. I never cared for it after that.
I played some of the newer, the anniversary stuff, like, again, but this was like Reach, so like there were a few more game modes added to this remastered map. I think for some it just did not work because it's just bull. Like, it's just total bull. Like capture the flag and stuff like that. It's just absolute BS.
Yeah, it is pretty lazy, to be honest.
And the other map was the Forerunner one that you see in the second mission, where it's like a firefight map.
Yay.
Yeah, woohoo.
One thing I think the big thing with Combat Evolved multiplayer is I think it gets more popularity or more notoriety because of Red versus Blue. That old Machinima series, which I did see bits and bobs of, but mostly when it was in Halo 3, and didn't go to like original animation and stuff, which I haven't seen that since.
I've honestly never cared for Red vs. Blue, nor have I ever cared for Rooster Teeth's version of it. I've never ever had any interest in it whatsoever.
I've only seen bits and bobs, but stuff like Blood Gulch, people have considered like the definitive Halo map, and I'm like, it's not. Yeah. Like it's rubbish to play on. It's just popular because it was used in Red vs. Blue to kind of drive home the whole thing of like, oh, here's a group of red, here's a group of blue. They don't know why they're here, and they're just staring at each other all the time. That's it. And yeah, it's fun like that, but it's not very fun to play. Plus as well,
better maps, like
the maps are not great, but even the multiplayer has its own issues with the Magnum. Whereas if you get a headshot on someone, 3 shots and they're dead. Every single time. I hate that. So it's not fun. So I think most people play specific game modes that omit the pistol, which I've seen on like sort of like community playlists and stuff, and like settings and whatnot. But yeah, as I said, there's actually a little bit more we actually said on multiplayer than I was expecting. I was initially assuming you'd be like, no, I've got nothing.
Yeah, it's because I played quite a bit of it on the Master Chief one, like taking breaks between the legendary playthroughs, because my god, I needed them.
I mean, you could have gone and played a different game, or you probably would have.
I could have.
Or you probably waste your time on Alien Isolation again.
Probably.
I say wasting time as if it's a bad game. We will talk about it in, I think, April, and we've got a lot to say on that one. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to close out talking about Combat Evolved, as we posed the question just before, like how it holds up in 2023, 22 years after its original release, for the most part, I think it still works. But it is mostly in the gameplay side of things, the score, the visuals, everything else, though. Yeah,
half and half for me,
it's
because
very much
it's
half and half.
like, at the time it was a very revolutionary game, but 20 years on, it's starting to show a bit, and I've said countless times, it just gets too repetitive for me. Like, it's especially in the later missions where like you do an objective and you're basically just circling back through these pre-built rooms and stuff like that, and they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally just feels like you're in some loop of repetitiveness.
Yeah, I'd say so. It is just a very repetitive game. I think in a way that's beyond bits of Halo 2, which that has more issues outside of repetitiveness, quite frankly. The main issue, as I say, with this game is very much repetition. It's full to the brim of it. And you can tell that they kind of ran out of ideas halfway through, and they're like, let's go backwards for a bit. Yeah, we can extend the runtime and the price of this game. That's fine. We can do that, can't we? Yeah, it's 2001. We haven't got anything else to do.
Nah, I mean, there's some missions where I generally enjoyed playing through.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Silent Cartographer, I think that's a generally quite a good mission because it's not too repetitive. There's actually a map to explore. But then, like, once you get to the flood missions, it just goes downhill in terms of being the same thing. The library being, again, the absolute worst offender for it, because, my god, there just isn't a single room that's any different from the previous room you were just in.
Yeah. And even, like, the final mission is... That engine, unfortunately, has been used several times in Halo games now. I think it's been used 3 or 4 times, I think. Something like
Definitely in 3, pretty much the same in 3, just a very big ship this time around.
Yeah, and a bit in ODST as well, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, of, like, the main games, I think it's, like, a third of the time. But, yeah, I still say I enjoy this game for the most part. I do like it, but... I'd be hard pressed to go back to it very often. Like,
I think I'm much in the same opinion, to be honest. Like, if I was gonna play it, I wouldn't do like the whole entire campaign. Like, I'd probably do the missions that I enjoyed the most.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not interested in the multiplayer side of it, because again, I've played it, didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm not really a multiplayer person to begin with. Like, Halo's probably the only exception of that.
Yeah, same. To be honest, I'm never big on multiplayer stuff anyway, because I'm just awkward like that. Also, I'm just terrible with this as well. Like, especially like playing Halo multiplayer occasionally, I do realize that, you know what, Regan, you are absolutely garbage at multiplayer first person shooters, or even just shooters in general. Like, you just see me on Grand Theft Auto, I just tend to hide behind walls the entire time. I'm like, I'm just driving around, can you stop blowing us up with your modded Hydra, for the love of God, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, certain missions, like if I was gonna pick, I'd probably say like the fun ones, but sadly the most long ones as well. I mean, the last one for certain, because that's quite fun. Bar the beginning, I hate the beginning of the mission where like you just basically have to go blow up the reactors, and it just drags on so much, and there's just so many flood.
Mm-hmm. There is,
and those
so
goddamn
flood.
Blobby floods.
Blobby flood. Oh no, not the blobby.
The little
floods.
carrier floods.
I don't know.
Because if you turn on the mutator, where it's like, well, here's a tip for Legendary, folks. Dan's tip to Legendary Halo, right? There is a skull multiplier that allows explosions to be twice as big. Now, that sounds all fine and dandy, right? But
No,
when
it
you
doesn't.
have enemies that explode, it's not fine and dandy.
What? So that actually, like,
Oh, yeah.
links in with their explosions. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
The same with the enemy grenades. It works the same way, as does the carrier forms. Honestly, the carrier forms are the worst part of that mutator, because once a chain reaction is set off, they all just start flying around everywhere and exploding. Like, if you're not killed by your own stupidity, you're just killed by them.
Jeez, I didn't actually know that at all.
Yeah.
That's
So I had to actually turn it off for the last mission because of how infuriating it got.
yeah. To be honest, I really don't blame you frankly. I wouldn't even just have it turned on at all to begin with. I'm actually just going to pretend you didn't actually mention that. I'd like to know it didn't exist, to be honest. But yeah, that is our thoughts on Halo Combat Evolved 22 years later. I'm not calling it 22 years later, I'm just calling it replayed. Just nice and easy, really.
Yeah.
That was definitely fun to talk about, though, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. Reliving the memories of Combat Evolved.
And COVID, technically.
Yeah.
And terrible internet. My God, like, honestly, I think that was more unreliable than most of these episodes have been. In terms of keeping a stable connection. Just like Dan's there, and then all of a sudden he's all the way over there. And he's not said a word.
The ping was absolutely horrendous. For some reason, right, when you do co-op online with Halo and the internet starts dying, it becomes like
horrible.
Sixth wall breaking points. It really does.
Oh, you know what it is? I just despised it so goddamn much. It was awful.
It's like, oh, he's frozen there. Oh, now he's over there. Oh, now he's just floating and walking. Oh, what's going on? Yeah, Jesus.
Everything's gone wrong. Luckily, the internet's slightly better, but Dan doesn't have an Xbox anymore. So it's just... We will do co-op on Halo again, but we'll do it for Infinite because it is designed for that. Crossplay, because we're all modern like that with our swanky new consoles and
it's just mad, like PC. The fact that like this game in particular, when it came out, like there was none of this, like, kids playing Halo now don't realize the struggle of having a wired controller into a console with 4 controller inputs, and when those inputs started to knack up, it was like that game show where you've basically got to pick the correct box. It was basically you've got to pick the correct port.
System
like
link
if number one went, then you go into number 2, and then over time number 1 starts working again for some weird reason.
Yeah.
And then you just heighten for 4 because why not?
Yeah, I was just used to split screen, to be honest, and then all of a sudden I was playing with other people, but just on one screen. I'm like, this is so much nicer.
Yeah.
It's slow and jittery, but it's nice.
Nicer.
It's a little bit nicer. But yes, as I said, that's our thoughts on Halo Combat Evolved. I really hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, first time doing video games again for a while. Naturally, that's why we're covering Halo, because we want to do them more. It's just a case of finding games that both me and Dan actually play and enjoy, and you'll be delighted to know there's definitely a few of those this year, not just Halo. As mentioned before, we will cover Alien Isolation in April. We will also cover Halo 2 in April. Now I'm currently looking at the schedule. We're not doing that in March. Just sod that. We will talk about another video game next month, though, so you can look forward to that. Now, obviously, I was initially going to jokingly open this episode with, so Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is currently in cinemas, so we're not going to talk about it.
Jesus.
Now, we are going to cover it next week.
No, the horror.
Yeah, now look, we're saying that based on the fact that reviews have been pretty dire.
See, I've already made my mind up. Like, it's not even through reviewers. Like, I've got a mind of my own. I just know this is going to be terrible.
I can only hope, to be honest. I'd like to think that there might be one thing that we can come out with.
I hope I don't think like that, but I've just got to a stage where I'm just so sick of superhero films at the minute. As mentioned in our previous episode of me slating Reagan's favourite film of all time, but
I'll survive. So, yeah, we are going to cover it. But depending on our overall feelings on it, that will determine if we actually cover any more Marvel stuff this year, because there is stuff I do, if I do decide to cover it, because I will go and see them anyway. It's not really costing me anything extra now. So, stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I'll absolutely go and watch.
Yeah.
Whether or not we cover it in an actual podcast, probably not. If I do eventually get around to doing actual video reviews for YouTube, at the very least you'll get a Letterboxd review. Shameless plug once again. That's about as far as I'll go. It's a bit like with DC now. Covering Shazam, yes. Flash, possibly. I mean, that trailer was just bait.
Yeah, I guess we're just going to see how it goes.
156% bait. Plus with too many Batmen, and by that
Too
I
many
mean
Batmen.
2 Batmen.
2 Batmans.
That is too many. The film's called The Flash. Remember that.
I think, as I mentioned, and not just in this one, our previous one, which is yet to be aired, but superhero stuff is just running its course for me. Like, I am on very thin ice with this specific subgenre of stuff. It's not that I don't enjoy other stuff outside of horror.
Oh no, of course
I do, but I am just so bored of the same generic superhero story ever. And you know, this film can preach its whole like quantum realm stuff, all of it at once. It's still gonna have the same Marvel stuff in it as every other Marvel film has this year.
Yeah, I think what we'll end up doing, you know, as I say, we will cover it, but I wouldn't be shocked if next week is mostly just a rant, basically, of just annoyance. And I know it'll be like a spoiler review, but quite frankly, it'll just be a rant review.
Yeah.
On both our ends, because I think even
the real ranters,
the real pod ranters,
the real pod ranters,
a pod rant.
A pod rant.
Can we actually coin that? I would quite like to coin that. We could probably do that. It's just sort of like another little side thing that we can do every now and again. It's just a pod rant.
Pod rant.
It'll be a bit like that episode of Family Guy when you got Peter Griffin on the TV and he's doing what like you know what really grinds my gears, and it's just something completely stupid every single time. We could do that. But yes, next week will be Ant-Man and the Wasp. Please be decent. Because I think after 2022, that's all I need, to be honest. But we will see. But as I say, thank you very much for listening. As ever, please share, like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. I'd really, really appreciate it. So stay tuned next week for hopefully something decent. Until then, it is goodbye from a currently happier Dan.
Farewell.
I say currently, we'll see it in 7 days. And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.